The moment the doorbell rang, I felt my heart lurch and my world tilt. I wasn't expecting anyone. I had spent the afternoon trying to hold myself together after discovering my husband's betrayal. Yet there she stood on our doorstep, drenched from the rain and trembling, eyes pleading. Her presence was like a ghost from a nightmare. My husband's affair partner, the woman he had used and then abandoned, now begging for my help. In that split second, I realized that everything I thought I knew about loyalty, betrayal, and forgiveness was about to be rewritten. I hesitated at the door, caught between shock and a fierce, unexpected surge of compassion. As the downpour mirrored the storm raging inside me, that I still remember the exact day I first learned of his infidelity. It began with a series of vague messages on his phone, messages I dismissed as harmless banter, until I discovered explicit photos and texts that confirmed what my gut had long suspected. My husband, David, had been unfaithful. For years I had trusted him implicitly. We met in college, fell in love over shared dreams and late-night conversations, and built a life together in a modest home that I believed symbolized our unbreakable bond. We had planned for a future filled with quiet contentment, simple dinners, weekend hikes, and the kind of home-cooked comfort that I thought only true love could provide. I never imagined that behind that gentle smile and caring gaze lay a secret double life. The discovery left me shattered, my trust splintered into countless jagged pieces. I confronted him, and his explanations were a series of half-truths and hollow apologies. I was desperate for answers, for any sign that the man I had loved was still there. But as the weeks passed, the gulf between us only widened. David became increasingly distant, and the more he tried to patch things up, the more I realized that some betrayals were too deep to heal. I withdrew into myself, retreating to the quiet solace of our home while my heart raged with betrayal and sorrow. Then, as if the universe decided that my pain wasn't enough, something even more surreal happened. One dreary Thursday evening, just as I was coming to terms with my new reality, I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting visitors. The rain had turned the streets into reflective mirrors of my mood, and the soft patter on the porch sent a chill down my spine. I hesitated before opening the door, my mind bracing for the worst. When I swung it open, there she was, a stranger, yet unmistakably connected to the nightmare I had been living. Standing in the dim light was Miranda, David's mistress. But something was different about her now. Her eyes, wide with a mixture of desperation and regret, darted around as if searching for an escape. In her soaked coat and disheveled hair, she looked far removed from the confident, alluring woman I had once seen in David's texts and secret snapshots. Instead, she appeared broken, vulnerable, and lost. For a long moment, we simply stared at each other, the rain cascading down her face, mingling with tears that betrayed the composure she had once wielded so effortlessly. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain, "I need help." My heart pounded, a torrent of conflicting emotions surging within me. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, to cast her aside as just another reminder of David's betrayal. But another part, one that I had long thought dead, stirred with unexpected compassion. I remembered the times I had been fragile, the moments when I too had needed a helping hand. Perhaps in her eyes, I saw the echo of my own pain. That I stepped aside, motioning for her to come in. "Sit down," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the maelstrom inside me. She hesitated, then slowly stepped into the warmth of our living room, shivering and clutching her purse tightly. I led her to the sofa and draped a blanket over her shoulders. The silence between us was heavy, punctuated only by the rhythmic tapping of rain against the window. "Why are you here?" I finally asked, my tone a blend of guarded curiosity and restrained anger. Her eyes filled with tears, and she took a shaky breath. I'm sorry. I didn't know where else to go," she stammered. "David left me. He abandoned me." Her words tumbled out in fragments, barely coherent, as if she were drowning in a sea of regret. I listened, my mind swirling with memories of all the times David had dismissed my pain with a shrug or an apology that never meant anything. Now here was Miranda, a woman who had been a part of his secret world, broken and seeking refuge. "Abandoned you?" I pressed softly, leaning forward. "Tell me what happened." She looked at me with pleading eyes, and for a moment, I could see the ghost of the confident woman she once was. "It started a few months ago," she began hesitantly. We had something and I thought it was real. I thought he cared about me. But then he started ignoring me. I would call, text, nothing. I went to him and he said it was all just business, that I was overreacting. But then I found out everything. And I'm alone with no one to turn to. Her voice broke and she buried her face in her hands. In that moment, a part of me wanted to lash out, to curse her for being part of the betrayal that had destroyed my trust in David. But the raw vulnerability in her eyes also stirred a complex cocktail of emotions. I remembered how I had once felt isolated in the wake of betrayal, and the bitter taste of being abandoned by the one you trusted most. "You expected him to stay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Even as my emotions churned inside me, she lifted her head, tears glistening on her cheeks. "I thought he loved me," she said softly. "I thought I was enough. But I was wrong." I sat back, absorbing her words. It was strange. Here was the woman who had once stood by David's side, a willing participant in his secret life, now reduced to a shadow of herself, pleading for help. I wondered if I could ever reconcile the image of her with the person I had known from the glossy, confident texts and photos. The truth was that betrayal often left everyone broken in its wake for hours. We sat in that rain-soaked living room, talking in hushed, sorrowful tones. I told her about the night I discovered the extra phone, about the endless texts and images that had shattered my world. She listened, her eyes welling with tears as I recounted the betrayal that had so thoroughly upended my life. In turn, she shared her own story, the gradual disillusionment, the moments when she realized that David's affections had shifted, the loneliness that followed every unanswered call. Her narrative was raw and painful, filled with a sense of betrayal that echoed my own. As the night wore on, I found myself torn. On one hand, I was still reeling from the shock and devastation of my own discovery. On the other, I felt an unexpected empathy for Miranda, a complicated mix of compassion and resentment. How could it be that two women, both used by the same man, ended up in such desperate, heartbroken states? Was it all his fault, or had we both played a part in letting him in so deeply? In the early hours of the morning, when the rain had finally subsided to a gentle drizzle, I made a decision. I couldn't go back to the life I'd once known, not with the weight of betrayal hanging over me like a dark cloud. I decided to confront David, to demand answers, and to make it clear that his actions had consequences. But before that, I needed to deal with the person who had inadvertently become an accomplice in his deceit. I told Miranda that she deserved to find her own path, one that didn't involve a man who used her and then discarded her. I offered her a modest, albeit reluctant, word of advice. You deserve better than to be left alone, abandoned by someone who can't give you what you need. You should leave him and build a life for yourself. Her eyes, red and haunted, searched mine as if pleading for assurance. "I don't know how to do that," she admitted. "I thought he was the one." I sighed, feeling the weight of my own pain in her words. "Sometimes we think the person we choose is enough to fill the void," I said gently. "But if they can't, you have to find strength in yourself." It was a truth I'd learned the hard way. The next day I called David. I waited for him to answer, each ring amplifying the dread in my chest. When he finally did, his voice was tentative, almost apologetic. "I'm home," he said, as if that were all that mattered. I asked him if he could come over. I needed to confront him, to see if he would deny everything or if he'd admit the betrayal. He hesitated, then agreed. When he arrived, I could see the apprehension in his eyes, a flicker of something like regret. We sat in the living room, the same room where just a few days ago I had confronted him with the evidence of his double life, and I laid it all out. I showed him the screenshots, the texts, the images of him and Miranda together. His face crumpled with each new piece of evidence. "I'm so sorry," he repeated, voice breaking. "But I wasn't there to seek forgiveness." "You thought I'd never find out," I said, voice heavy with sorrow and anger. "You thought you could hide behind lies, that your deceit wouldn't affect me?" I told him that the truth was too painful to ignore, that I had already taken steps to ensure I wouldn't be a victim of his betrayal any longer. He tried to explain, talking about feeling neglected, about being drawn to someone who made him feel alive. But I cut him off. "I deserve better," I said simply. "I deserve honesty and respect. I'm not going to be your scapegoat." His excuses fell on deaf ears as I made it clear that the marriage was over. I informed him that I was filing for divorce, and that I expected him to leave our home immediately. That day marked the beginning of the end. As David gathered a few of his belongings, Miranda too decided to leave. She had been staying over more often than not, but now, with the truth out in the open, her role in his double life was clear. I felt a bittersweet pang as I watched them leave together, their silhouettes disappearing into the distance. Part of me was relieved to see them go, but another part of me mourned the collapse of the life we had built. The divorce proceedings were long and painful. Every court session forced me to relive the betrayal, every piece of evidence a reminder of the nights spent questioning my own worth. I struggled with conflicting emotions. I was angry, hurt, and deeply saddened, but I also felt a newfound determination to rebuild my life. I wanted to ensure that I wasn't defined by the betrayal, that I could emerge from the wreckage with my dignity intact. I worked with my attorney to secure our assets, to ensure that I retained the house we'd once shared, and to protect my financial future. The legal battle was exhausting, but it also gave me a sense of control over my destiny. As the final divorce decree was signed, I felt a tumultuous mix of sorrow and liberation. I had lost a partner, a lover, and the dreams we once nurtured together. But I had gained something equally precious, a future where I was in charge, where honesty wasn't optional, and where I could finally begin to heal. I started redecorating the house, removing photos that once captured happier times, and replacing them with artwork that symbolized hope and renewal. Each brushstroke on the walls was a declaration that I was moving forward, that I would not let betrayal dictate my future. My nights became a time of reflection. I often sat by the window watching the city lights flicker against the dark sky, and I allowed myself to grieve for the loss of the relationship I had once cherished. I wrote in a journal, detailing every moment of pain, every flash of anger, every slow step toward healing. I would sometimes revisit the screenshots not to relive the pain, but to remind myself of the strength it took to confront the truth. Each time I looked at them, I saw not just the evidence of her betrayal, but also the moment I reclaimed my voice, the moment I refused to be silenced. Over the next year, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I immersed myself in my work, gradually rediscovering passions I had long suppressed. I took up painting again, a quiet hobby that allowed me to express the complex emotions that words couldn't capture. I reconnected with old friends and even made new ones, each connection a reminder that I wasn't alone in my journey. Therapy helped me untangle the web of betrayal and rebuild my self-worth. I learned that forgiveness wasn't about absolving someone of their wrongdoing, it was about freeing yourself from the chains of the past so you could move on with your life. I forgave, eventually, not for her sake but for mine. There were moments when I would catch myself wondering if things could have been different. If I had confronted her sooner, if I had been more assertive, if I had even known that she was leading a double life from the start. But such what-ifs eventually faded into the background as I embraced the hard-earned lessons. I learned that trust must be earned, that love built on deception is a fragile, fleeting thing, and that your self-respect is worth far more than the comfort of a familiar lie. One afternoon, as I was walking through our neighborhood with Pepper by my side, I paused in front of a small park where I had once taken long, leisurely walks with her. The sight of children laughing, couples strolling hand in hand, and the sound of birds singing reminded me of a life that was full of promise before betrayal had cast its long shadow. I felt a pang of loss but also a stirring of hope. I realized that I was capable of finding joy again, that I could learn to trust not just others but myself. The scars of betrayal would always be a part of me, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they had become markers of my strength, proof that I had survived even the deepest wounds. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I would think about the night I confronted her with the evidence. I remembered her tear-streaked face, the look of horror and regret in her eyes. I wondered if she truly understood the magnitude of what she had done, if she could ever see how her choices had not only destroyed our marriage but also shattered the very foundation of trust we had built over a lifetime. I didn't know if she ever did learn that lesson, but I did learn mine. I learned that no one is indispensable if they choose to betray the one who loves them unconditionally. Now, as I sit here in the solitude of my reclaimed home, I can almost hear the echoes of that painful past mingling with the gentle hum of a hopeful future. Pepper curls up beside me on the couch, and I watch the sunset through large windows that let in streams of golden light, a stark contrast to the dark days of betrayal. I have learned to let the memories exist without letting them control me. I have rebuilt my life, and in doing so, I have discovered a resilience I never knew I possessed. Looking back, the journey from discovery to confrontation to rebuilding was not linear. It was a tumultuous, winding path marked by moments of excruciating sorrow and unexpected triumphs. Each phase of that journey taught me something vital about trust, about love, and about the need for honest communication. I now understand that forgiveness is not about forgetting the pain or excusing the betrayal. It is about freeing yourself from the lingering grip of that pain so that you can move forward with your life. My ex-wife's decision to lead a double life left me with nothing but her lies, yet in the aftermath, I discovered my own truth. I learned that I was worth more than being a silent victim, that I could rise from the wreckage of a shattered marriage and build something beautiful out of the broken pieces. I found solace in the creative process, in the support of friends who reminded me that I was strong enough to survive, even thrive. Every day is a testament to the fact that while betrayal may scar you, it does not have to break you. I have no illusions that the pain has entirely vanished. There are still nights when I lie awake, my mind replaying the discovery of that second phone and the cold, hard evidence of infidelity. But those memories now serve as a reminder of the price of deception and the strength it takes to stand up for yourself. I have reclaimed my power, my home, and my future. I have learned to trust myself again, to know that I deserve honesty, loyalty, and a love that does not hide behind lies. In the end, the moment I found out my wife had a secret second phone, and the betrayal that followed, was the catalyst for a profound transformation. I was forced to confront the painful truth, to gather the evidence, to expose the lies, and ultimately to make the hardest decision of my life, to leave behind a marriage built on deceit. I let her walk into the reality of my new life, with every secret exposed, and in doing so, I carved out a future that is entirely my own. The scars of that journey remain, but they are not marks of defeat. They are symbols of my resilience, of the fact that even in the face of overwhelming betrayal, I found the courage to rebuild, to move forward, and to reclaim my self-worth. That is the story of how I discovered the truth, faced the heartbreak, and emerged on the other side, stronger, wiser, and unbound by the lies that once defined my life.